Picture a Roman army on the march. 20 miles a day, armor blazing in the sun. They were an unstoppable force, conquering lands from the rainy islands of the British Isles to the magnificent pyramids of Giza. But how was this army able to fight so far away from Rome, in the blazing deserts of North Africa, when living off the land was impossible? Supply lines stretched thin the further they ventured away from Rome, and bread went stale and grain rotted after only a few days. So what was Rome's secret weapon? The buccellatum. It was as hard as rock, tasteless, unbreakable. And yet, it was another piece of Roman ingenuity that allowed the Romans to conquer 20% of the known world. But what made buccellatum Rome's secret weapon? Rome's power stretched across continents, but feeding that power was a nightmare. A single legion could devour tens of thousands of pounds of food in a week. Every day of marching meant more mouths to feed, more wagons to drag behind them, and more chances for hunger to catch up. But grain spoiled fast, and bread turned moldy within days. In the heat of Africa or the damp forests of Germania, food was never guaranteed. An army might win a battle, yet starve before it returned home. Therefore, the Romans realized something profound. Victory didn't depend on who fought best. It depended on who had the best supplies. And with the Roman legionaries fighting so far from Rome, they had to perfect the art of supplying their armies effectively. And so, the Romans' answer was staggeringly simple. Wheat was sacred to Rome. It fed the poor, paid the soldiers, and powered the empire's cities. The government controlled grain like modern nations control oil. Every legionary received roughly 2 pounds of wheat per day. Normally, they ground it themselves, baking it into loaves or porridge. But time was no luxury in war. Sometimes they'd marched for weeks through barren land with no mills and no time to rest. So their soft bread turned hard and inedible after a few days. Therefore, the Romans needed food that could last, something that wouldn't rot, wouldn't mold, and wouldn't slow them down. So Roman bakers came up with an ingenious recipe, not for comfort, but for endurance. The recipe was brutally simple. Wheat flour, water, and salt, nothing more. Mixed into a dense dough, flattened into round shapes, and baked until stiff. Then, after cooling, they baked it again, driving out every last drop of moisture. It became so hard it could last for months, even years if kept dry. The soldiers called it buccellatum, the twice-baked bread. It wasn't delicious, but it worked. A soldier couldn't bite into it without risking a broken tooth. Instead, they smashed it with their daggers, soaked it in wine or vinegar, and waited for it to soften. And through that simple, tasteless biscuit, discipline became survival. Every legionary carried his own supplies, about 45 kilograms on his back. Pick up a bag of cement and try carrying that around all day for weeks on end. That's what Roman soldiers had to carry. They carried essentials, weapons, armor, stakes for fortifications, cooking pots, personal gear, and food. Fresh meat was a luxury. Vegetables were heavy, and cheese melted in the sun. But buccellatum didn't spoil. A soldier could march across a continent with a few days' worth of biscuits in his pack, and still have something edible at the end of it. Therefore, the Roman army became mobile in ways others weren't. They could cross deserts, mountains, and frozen rivers without waiting for supply wagons. Night in a Roman camp was always the same. Tents lined in perfect rows, campfires burning low, guards pacing the perimeter. After long days of marching, soldiers sat together, 8 men per tent, 1 contubernium. They'd pull out their rations, a handful of grain, a strip of salted pork, a wedge of cheese, and a few biscuits of buccellatum. But there was no luxury, no feast. You'd pour vinegar into your cup, crumble the biscuit into it, and wait until it softened. You'd chew slowly, talking about home or the next day's march. But how did Rome fuel this need for flour? Their conquests weren't random. Rome sought out lands rich with wheat. They expanded into fertile regions, Sicily, Egypt, North Africa, not by coincidence, but by necessity. These provinces became Rome's granaries. Ships filled with grain sailed constantly to feed cities and legions. But transporting grain was risky. One storm, one pirate raid, and supplies could vanish. And while grain could be stored, it still needed to be baked into something durable before soldiers could carry it. Therefore, Rome built entire supply networks dedicated to baking. Military bakeries churned out thousands of biscuits at a time, stored in sacks and distributed to legions across the empire. Buccellatum became as essential as the gladius or the shield. Without it, armies stalled. With it, they marched endlessly. By baking twice, Roman bakers eliminated moisture, the main cause of decay. Without water, bacteria couldn't grow. It was revolutionary. A simple food source that could be carried and didn't rot. But the brilliance didn't stop there. The biscuit was light, stackable, and easy to transport. Its simplicity made it nearly impossible to ruin. Therefore, the same biscuit could feed soldiers on the Rhine, sailors in the Mediterranean, and workers building roads in Gaul. Yet for the soldiers who ate it, buccellatum wasn't a marvel. It was misery. Day after day, the same hard ration. No comfort, no softness. Centuries later, armies around the world copied the idea. Medieval knights carried hardtack. Napoleon's troops ate biscuit de guerre. Sailors in the age of exploration gnawed on naval biscuits for months at sea. But all of it traced back to the same Roman logic. If you can feed your army, you can conquer the world. Buccellatum's legacy outlived the empire itself. It became the blueprint for military rations, a Roman legacy that lives on even today. Greatness often hides in simplicity. The things that last the longest aren't always the most beautiful. They're the most useful. But what made the buccellatum a secret weapon? No sword or shield could keep an army alive through hunger, only Rome's secret weapon. But buccellatum did more than feed soldiers. It fed momentum. It allowed Rome to keep pushing forward when others would have stopped. Therefore, it became the empire's secret weapon, invisible in victory, but essential to every one of them. The biscuit didn't win battles, but without it, no battles could be fought. Even today, armies rely on rations inspired by the same idea: food that lasts, travels, and sustains. But unlike Rome, our inventions often chase comfort or flavor. The Romans chased survival. That difference is why their story still resonates. Rome's victories are remembered in marble, in monuments, in names carved into stone. But the empire's endurance, its true strength, was baked in humble ovens and carried in soldiers' packs. The biscuit never shouted, never shone, never bled. Yet without it, Rome would have gone hungry, and history would have marched in a different direction. The buccellatum was a key player in Rome's ability to win over 79% of battles it participated in. But what made the Romans so successful at warfare?